So for the interpretive reading manual, I'm to read a story to you, and a significant story in my life. And this story I vividly remember from first grade. It was at Thanksgiving time, and the teacher read the story, and then we all made collectively stone soup, and we had to sample it as a community. And this story is one of my first significant memories of that class and school, and it is an important lesson about community and sharing that transcends time, place, people. It is an old French tale as told by Marcia Brown. Stone soup. 3 soldiers trudged down a strange road in a country. They were on their way home from the wars, many long years. They were tired and hungry. In fact, they had nothing to eat for 2 whole days. How I would love a good dinner tonight, the first soldier said. I would love a good place to sleep tonight, said the second. But that is all not possible, said the third. So on we march. And on they marched when suddenly ahead there was a village with light. Oh, maybe we will find a bite to eat, said the first soldier. A place to sleep, said the second soldier. So on we must march, and there's no harm in asking, said the third, and so they marched. Now the peasants feared the soldiers, and when they heard that soldiers were coming, they began to talk among themselves. Here come those soldiers. Soldiers are always hungry, and we have little enough food for ourselves. So they hurried to hide their food. They buried their sacks of barley under the haylofts. They lowered buckets of milk into the wells. They spread old quilts all over their carrot bins. They hung cabbage and potatoes under their beds. They had all they had, and they waited for the soldiers to come. First, the soldiers stopped at the house of Paul and Francois. Good evening to you. Could you spare a bit of food for these hungry soldiers? Francis looked sad. Paul said, we've had no food for ourselves for 3 whole days. We have nothing to spare. So the 3 soldiers went on to the house of Albert and Louise. Could you spare a bite to eat? They said. Oh, no, said Albert. We gave all we could to the soldiers who came before us, and now we have nothing for ourselves. And our beds are full, said Louise. At Vincent and Marie's house, the answer was the same. It had been a poor harvest, there was no grain left for the feed, and throughout the whole village, the answer was always the same. Not a peasant had a bite of food to give, and they all had very good reasons. They had to feed a family, they had no grain, they had a sick family member, all had many, many mouths to feed. The villagers stood in the street of summer, and they looked as sad as they could. So the 3 soldiers began to talk together. Then the first soldier called out, Good people, draw near. We are 3 hungry soldiers in a strange land, and we've asked for food, and you have no food. Well then, you will make stone soup. The peasants stared. Stone soup? They'd never heard of such a thing. First, we just need to borrow a large iron pot, the soldier said. The peasants brought in the pot. How else to cook it up? The largest pot they could find. We will fill it with water and a fire to heat. That is all we ask. It took many buckets to fill the iron pot. A fire was built, and the water was set to boil. And now, if you please, 3 is all we ask. Small, round stones for our stone soup. Those were easy enough to find, so the villagers gave them 3 stones, and they placed it in the pot, and they stared, and they watched the pot boil. Now, any soup needs just a little salt and pepper, said the soldiers as the stones began to boil in the water. So the children ran to fetch just a little salt and pepper. Stones like this would be much better with salt and pepper in the soup. And as the aroma of the salt began to fill the air, the soldier says, and you know, some carrots, just a few carrots would be a nice touch to the stone soup. Why, that sad-faced Frances, she said, I think I have a spare carrot or 2 to share. So she came apron full of carrots. Now, the soldiers began to slice those carrots into the stone pot. And as the aroma of the carrots began to fill the village square, the soldiers talked and said, yes, this is going to be a good stone soup. A better stone soup would be one with cabbages. Ah, Marie said, I have a few cabbages I could spare, so she ran home, came back with 3 cabbages from under the bed. Now, if we only had a bit of barley and beef to put in the soup, this would be good soup, fit for a rich man's table, said the soldiers. So the peasants, they ran over and remembered their potatoes and beef hanging and hiding in their cellars. They ran to fetch them. Wow, soup good enough for a rich man's table, all from some stones? The villagers were clearly surprised. Ah, said the soldiers, and they stirred in the beef and the potatoes. This would be a soup fit for a king. We only had some barley in it. In fact, the king had such a soup the last time we were there with him, and we dined. The peasants were amazed. Stone soup fit for a king? Well, 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 the soldiers said, there's no use asking for what we do not have. Ah, but the peasant said, we can have a soup for a king. Here, have some milk. At last, the soup was ready. Ah, you shall all taste, said the soldiers, but first a table must be set. And the tables were placed in the square, and all around torches were lit. And such a soup, how good it smelled, truly fit for a king. But a feast for a king, why that must have soup, besides bread, roast, cider. Soon a full banquet was spread in the village square, and everyone sat down to eat. Never had there been such a feast. Never had the peasants tasted such a soup, a stone soup. Now the villagers and soldiers, they ate and they drank and they ate. And after that, they danced well into the night. And when everyone was tired, the soldiers said, may we please have a loft to sleep in? And the villagers said, no! Fine men as you, who can make such stone soup, you must have the best bedrooms in the villages. And so, at first, the soldier slept in the priest's house. The second soldier slept in the baker's house. The third soldier slept in the mayor's house. Now in the morning, the village gathered in the square to send off the soldiers. Many thanks for what you have taught us, said the villagers. We shall never go hungry again, for you have taught us how to make stone soup. It is all in the knowing how, said the soldiers, and off they went down the road.
Thank you very much. Great story. Mr. Timer, may I have 60 seconds, please? Let's everybody take a minute. Give Marilyn some feedback. Now for our second speaker, one of our newer members who's progressing rapidly along in his speeches. Today's working from the Confident Communication Manual. The project is How to Say It. The speaker will be Jonathan Taylor. His title of his speech will be NASM Training. So I'd like to introduce Jonathan Taylor.